All right. Thanks for joining us, Michael Moro from Genesis. Great to have you here. Great to have the audience here. My name is Fong Lee. I'm the president and CFO of MicroStrategy. Thrilled to have this event and thrilled to have Genesis here with us. Michael, for those who may not know you or may not know your company, I'd love for you to just give us a brief background about yourself and the company and anything you want to share.
Happy to do it. Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Moro. I am the CEO of Genesis. We are a cryptocurrency-focused prime broker, headquartered in New York with offices in London and in Singapore, really catering to institutional accounts, corporations, hedge funds, family offices, and some high net worth individuals as a one-stop shop for their crypto investing, custody, borrowing, and lending needs.
Great. So I recently read your Q4 report, and I saw that you facilitated $45 billion in transactions, which is just a staggering number, and also staggering growth. And I saw that you surpassed $5 billion in assets. So tell me about that, just sort of overall, how that breaks down between your different businesses, the type of work you do, and tell me how that growth is compared to maybe a year ago, a quarter ago. And obviously it's really significant. So I'd love you to give the context to the audience.
Happy to do it. So, well, let's really back up. So we launched our over-the-counter Bitcoin trading business in early 2013. So this is now year 8 of us serving institutions within the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And we started it through our FINRA and SEC registered broker-dealer. So we've always gone about our participation in the space from a regulated counterparty perspective, in terms of really kind of giving our clients and our counterparties that trusted partner approach. And especially back in the 2013 Wild West of crypto days, we were certainly different in kind of how we approached building out our business. But like ultimately it was basically 3 things. One was this idea around Bitcoin is an asset class that is here to stay. Number 2 is that institutional investors will get involved. And number 3, when institutions do get involved, they will expect similar types of products and services that exist in other asset classes, that we needed to make it as similar an experience for corporations and institutions to buy and sell Bitcoin and hold their crypto as they might with their equities or their bonds or their commodities allocations. So, but we really wanted to be thoughtful about how we sequence the business. A crypto prime broker for institutions in 2013 was a non-starter, right? You were way too early in kind of the maturation and development of the asset class. So all we did for the first 5 years of our business was block trading, was really kind of heavy voice brokerage based, helping large transactions, sort of $1 million plus for high net worth individuals and some of the earliest institutions to get involved. But from a volume perspective, when we first started, if we were able to do $5 or $10 million of transactions in a month, that was a good month, right? But that was when Bitcoin price was, call it $100. So it was a long time ago. Certainly 2017 bull market introduced a lot more institutional accounts. In 2018, we launched our lending business, which really sort of enabled financing. It really enabled the ability to short the spot market, as well as kind of hedge their exposure elsewhere. And I think the 2017 bull market helped us launch our 2018 lending business. And then we acquired our custody business in 2020 to really allow us to hold third-party funds and really sort of marry kind of the trading, the lending, and the custody experience, as well as our derivatives business that we also launched last year, in a really kind of seamless, institutional, friendly platform with the white glove service. We have sales representatives, we have traders that you can get on the phone and get marketing color from and really hold your hand ultimately through the process. But back to your original question regarding our volumes, we did $8 billion of transactions on our spot trading desk just in Q4. And that is show only to institutions, and including some of the corporations that we've already worked with. The derivatives business, we did nearly $6 billion in just the 3 months in notional, mostly around sort of options. And then our lending business, which accounted for nearly $20 billion of originations in Q4. And that really is a business which has really kind of helped to add additional market infrastructure piece, which I'm happy to get into in our presentation here.
Yeah, I think that'd be useful, Michael. I think people understand the spot trading business. I think people understand the custody business, and we can go into those in a sec. But you do a robust derivatives business, trading business, and a robust lending business. Just for folks who are working in corporations, why would they consider those? Tell us a little bit more about those pieces.
Sure, happy to do it. So let's chat about the lending piece first, because I do think that's a more meaningful kind of conversation, certainly for this audience. I think for us, we started our lending business in about 3 years ago, in March of 2018. And I think one of the things we said was, hey, you could short and get borrows of stocks. Why couldn't you do this in Bitcoin, right? Like what missing services and products kind of exist in the crypto ecosystem? How could Genesis potentially fill that void? And frankly, we launched our March 2018 business. That was really kind of the start of the bear market, right? In crypto, we had the big bull market in 2017. 2018 was the year in which kind of crypto prices fell 80%, 90% across even some of the biggest coins, and really kind of helped jumpstart our business as folks look to borrow spot to either take a short view on a particular asset or to hedge their long exposure that they may ultimately kind of have elsewhere. Later that year, when the price of Bitcoin hit their bottom, we then saw the other way, and which I think is an important development. We had folks come to say, hey, I've got Bitcoin. I don't want to sell it, but I would like some liquidity. Can I get a US dollar borrow against my Bitcoin? And we said, sure, let's do it. And we had a lot of our institutional accounts, most of the kind of the trading hedge fund firms, borrow against their long buy and hold Bitcoin, their held to maturity Bitcoin, if you will, and then borrow US dollars against it and then buy more Bitcoin with it, right? As a levered long play to take advantage of a rising price environment. And what that really did was try to get us to kind of be creative and thoughtful about Bitcoin as collateral. And I think that is an underappreciated attribute in conversations in the crypto ecosystem today. What I do think about Bitcoin is really sort of the perfect collateral. What do I mean by that? I really have this view that yes, Bitcoin trades billions and billions of dollars a day. It is a highly liquid asset where folks are able to accumulate transactions in size without incurring kind of that market slippage. Number two, it trades 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are able to, if we needed to liquidate that collateral at 3 a.m. on Christmas morning, we are able to do that because of the way the market ultimately functions and the availability of liquidity that's there this day or night. And for us, as folks are lending against that Bitcoin, like we can't do that with so many other traditional kind of financial assets that we kind of think about borrowing against. And I think one of the value propositions for Genesis is, yes, we work with lots of companies and lots of hedge funds who say, okay, I want to buy Bitcoin through a broker dealer. Give me my regulated counterparty. And I feel really good about the source of Bitcoin and really know that like I have a good handle from an AML KYC perspective. And I'm able to tell people, if I bought this from an SEC FINRA registered entity, I'm good. Secondly, if I ever needed to borrow against it, I'm not locked into Bitcoin, right? You don't have to sell your Bitcoin to get that liquidity. You are able to now borrow that. You can post that as collateral and get US dollar funding off of it. And I think that's a game changer. I think companies and institutions are realizing that they are able to, because of the nature of Bitcoin as collateral, really be able to get creative without incurring, capital gains if you have to sell your Bitcoin. No, you're just posting that as collateral and getting dollars against it. I think that flexibility, I think is really, really important to the marketplace. And regarding the derivatives, really quickly, the growth of the asset class, I think, has really helped say, hey, if I'm long Bitcoin and I want to generate some intermediate income, can I sell covered calls? Can I do call overwriting strategies to generate extra income against the kind of the Bitcoins I hold? There are markets developing for significantly liquid options markets. And so folks are now trying to express their view, not only in the spot market, but in the derivatives market as well, without putting up the full collateral that's required on the actual transaction, get some leverage on the option side as well. So folks are now getting creative as the market overall matures.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I think you point something out that is maybe still misunderstood, especially in the role of a corporate treasurer, for example, that an investment in Bitcoin is actually extremely liquid. But then, when you talk about lending against that Bitcoin and actually being able to get, fiat currencies or US dollars while you still hold that Bitcoin, is very attractive, and gives you a lot of optionality beyond just sort of the standard asymmetric upside that you get out of Bitcoin. So I know you provide treasury services that could very well be targeted towards a corporate treasurer. So how might a treasurer or CFO benefit from some of those types of services that you provide?
So ultimately, one of our prime value adds is our white glove approach as a prime broker to institutional accounts. So what we're able to do is we have a sales department, we have account representatives, we have folks that you can call, and we will handhold you through the entire process, from the diligence against Genesis as your potential counterparty, to walk your hand through the accounting, the finance, many of the panels that the MicroStrategy conference covered yesterday regarding how to think about compliance, how do I think about legal, how do I mark my investments, all of that stuff are conversations that we help corporates and other institutional accounts have with us every single day. So ultimately, I'm interested to have this conversation around Bitcoin as part of my treasury holdings. How do I do this? And how can Genesis help me? So to your point, Fong, what we did was we created our landing page on our genesistrading.com/treasury to really say, hey, treasurers, let's have the conversation. Let's chat about, hey, here's how the trading works. Here's how custody works. And if you ever needed to borrow against it, here's how the lending and borrowing part of the value proposition ultimately works as well. So it really is, and not just sort of a treasury conversation, because it usually is a conversation starter, but it ultimately involves into conversations with finance folks and accounting folks and legal and compliance and all of it. And we have the team on staff to basically be able to walk all of our clients through our thought process, as well as best practices, as we've helped other institutional accounts navigate the process.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a great service to corporations. Now, as you probably know, the audience we have here today and yesterday is quite international in nature. We have a lot of people from the US, but a lot of people from probably pretty much every country in the world right now. And some are probably wondering, okay, so what are your services? What is your global presence, and what services do you provide and are able to provide around the world?
So as I mentioned at the beginning, our global headquarters is in New York, and we have our office in London, and we have our entity in Singapore. And as far as kind of the licensing framework goes, as I mentioned, the trading entity, we are still an SEC FINRA registered broker dealer. In addition, we're also in the state of New York. And so there's the New York State Department of Financial Services BIT license, which Genesis Trading also has. The custody entity, Genesis Custody Limited, is in the UK. And that has the FCA registration, as they're coming up with their crypto regulations in the UK. So that is registered with the FCA. And we're also going through the process with the Monetary Authority of Singapore to get our Singaporean entity properly licensed to be able to conduct business there. And our lending business is actually 50% non-US. The fact that we are able to take other forms of crypto as collateral, and the other fact that we can take stable coins as collateral, where the US dollar fiat leg is not necessary for a lot of the transactions that we do, has really kind of opened up the universe for us. And so we have clients all over the world. I think we're working with about 40 to 50 different countries in terms of where our clients and our counterparties ultimately sit. And so we are able to work with, pretty much everybody around the world, and we currently do.
Great. Thank you for that explanation. Okay, so let's say you're one of the attendees at the conference. You're a corporate treasurer, you're a CFO, you have $50 million sitting in fiat currencies, and you are very attracted to the thesis that you've heard over the last couple of days. And in fact, you now have a burning platform, and you want to get that $50 million into Bitcoin as soon as possible. You go to Genesis's landing page for Treasury Services, you get an email. How quickly, how does the process work? How fast can it go?
So the onboarding is done entirely online. So the initial document collection and filling out of information is done entirely online on the Genesis trading platform. And then there'll be email correspondence and follow-ups as appropriate as we request additional documentation or some clarification on some of the documents that you provided. Now, ultimately, some of the documents that we collect, the certificates of incorporation, articles of association or incorporation, business registration status, and ultimately the ownership and control structures, as well as kind of any AML, KYC type of policies and procedures that you may have in place. Corporations, depending upon how quickly they are able to come back to us with some of the information. So there's a little bit of back and forth. But most corporations were able to provide kind of that approval to kind of get going on the trading side within 3 to 5 business days is the typical turnaround, but really can be shorter or longer, ultimately depending upon how quickly it might take for the corporations to come back to us with their documentation that we might request.
Great. And so how do you compare that experience and just your firm in general versus other vendors and your competitors in the marketplace?
Ultimately, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question what the experience ultimately with our competitors might ultimately be. But I think one of the value add propositions for us is kind of we only onboard you one time. The various products and services that Genesis offers, whether it's spot trading or derivatives or lending, borrowing, or custody, it's really all done in kind of one seamless onboarding session. And yes, there are additional documents that might pertain to a particular business, but it's different than sort of onboarding. It might be a custody agreement if you want Genesis to be the custodian for your assets, or if there's a lending or borrowing agreement, there's kind of a separate legal documentation for that. But ultimately, our value add is that seamless, all-in-one, one-stop shop experience with a regulated counterparty. With the 8 years of experience in helping institutional accounts do exactly this. That this is our core business, and I think that is a different value proposition than probably what you might expect from folks that are more vertically focused.
Great. And so, yeah, you've been in the market serving institutions for 8 years. And so you are sort of one of the first with that specialty and focus. What advice would you offer to a corporation that's looking to integrate Bitcoin, either in their P&L as part of a corporate strategy or in their balance sheet as part of a treasury strategy? What would you say to them to sort of get them over that last hurdle to make the decision that this is the right thing to do if they're not there yet?
Ultimately, I think for one, my one advice is for folks who think that they've somehow missed Bitcoin. That like the rally, the price appreciation, the speculative nature is gone. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. I think there is plenty of upside that exists. Number two, I really do try to draw the alternative to Bitcoin might be holding in US dollars. And there's probably not too many things that is guaranteed to lose value. US dollars is unfortunately one of them. And so certainly, you think about the alternative places where you might be able to allocate your treasury. I do think it's important to kind of consider Bitcoin. And ultimately, if the asset is too risky or you deemed it too volatile, there's two different things. One, there are tools to hedge your exposure. so that there are ways to control aspects of risk that you might not be comfortable with from a market perspective. Number two, you can always, allocate a smaller percentage to the asset class and kind of control your risk appetite by dialing down your allocation ultimately. But having said this, we still have yet to see somebody who get into Bitcoin and then end up pulling out of it. We've gone through so many bulls and kind of bear market cycles, and there's not one person who said, I want to buy Bitcoin, and then somehow go through a bear market and then say, I was wrong, right? They end up either holding throughout the entire process, or they end up buying more, kind of accumulating in that down process. And so, I think that really does speak to the spirit and kind of longevity of Bitcoin as an asset class, and why I'm so confident of its continued growth going forward.
Yeah, so let's talk about your thoughts on growth, right? I think you might have heard in the last session that one survey that was conducted, 95% of corporate respondents said that they expect in the next 5 years to have digital assets somewhere in their balance sheet. Where do you see the market going? I think as I looked at your Q4 numbers, the smallest growth rate was on your spot trade volume, which was 80%. That was like everything else is over 100% growth. You think certain metrics growing 400%. What do you see happening with the market over the next 1 to 3 years? And if you want to put it out there, not too many people have taken it yet from Micah or I, but what's your price for Bitcoin at the end of 2021? Let's hear it.
I'm terrible at the price prediction.
Be the first to put a price out there on our sessions, Michael.
It's not and I'm also the CEO of a broker dealer, so oftentimes I want to make sure that this is not constituted as research when I talk about kind of the price predictions and whatnot. Ultimately, what do I think? We have made it our asset class what it is to be able to hold events like this. For the CME to be able to create Bitcoin futures, for a number of ETFs out there, for the largest asset manager in crypto and Grayscale to have $25 billion worth of assets under management without a single bank being involved, right? You talk about, maturity of the asset class. What inning are we? We always talk in like baseball analogies as far as, hey, what inning are we ultimately in? And it's hard for me. We're probably out of inning one, to be honest with you, being in the space as long as we have. I'm sure that the CME would not have a product if we were still in the first inning. But ultimately, the banks are not involved, and we still don't have an ETF, right? We still don't have an easily accessible product in the United States that is publicly traded. And I really think that it's hard to say we're in the middle innings without those two things. So, continuing the baseball analogy, I think we're somewhere between the second and third innings, to be honest with you, in terms of where we are, which means that we still have, 2/3 of the game to go in terms of kind of Bitcoin reaching its ultimate kind of potential as an asset. What do I think in the next 1 to 3 years? I think I think the banks are certainly going to get involved. I think the opportunity and the client demand, more importantly, is going to push them into getting involved, certainly in the asset class. And certainly when I think about, our competitors, who does kind of Genesis ultimately compete with? I do think that the competitive landscape switches towards the traditional primes in the equities world. I definitely think you'll see the Goldmans and the JP Morgans and if not them, certainly the middle market folks, I think will certainly be competitive in the space. And I welcome the competition because it means we're doing something right. It means the asset class is moving in the right direction for traditional incumbents to try to want to play in it. And I do think that really does help continuously kind of the institutionalization and maturation, ultimately, the asset class.
Great. The finance guys love their baseball analogy. I was going to ask you what the score is in the game in the second or the third inning, but I have a feeling we're up a lot right now. So.
We are. It depends on who we're comparing it to.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin's winning.
So what kind of product plans do you have for your company for the future, aligning with sort of the vision you have?
So we'll continue to roll out kind of the traditional products that you see in the prime brokerage space. So some of it is sort of capital introduction. really kind of marrying fund allocators with the funds themselves, saying, hey, family office, I can put you in touch with these highly accredited hedge funds for investment purposes. And I think we really have the best insight, right, into, you know, who's doing what in the hedge fund world, because of the numbers and volume and data we'll have on them to track their performance, their management skills, all of it. Number two, we'll get into the fund administration business. So we'll help folks kind of calculate net asset value. We'll help do their back office kind of a trade reconciliation and accounting. And I think that's potentially something that could be of interest to the corporates as well, to continuously track, you know, the cost basis, the mark to market. Bitcoin and crypto especially can be tricky. There's forks. There's airdrops. Things can get, you know, the crypto native nuances, I think, can be difficult to navigate. So we'll certainly look to introduce businesses in that area. And I think we'll continue our geographic growth. You know, we will have our European and Asian headquarters, and I think we'll end up creating satellite offices to cover our growing international demand.
Great. I think we're out of time. This was fascinating, Michael, and following the chat, I think people were really interested in this concept of borrowing with Bitcoin as collateral. Maybe we can take one quick question from the audience and then sign on off. People are trying to understand what kind of rates you get when you're borrowing against Bitcoin.
Ultimately, it's really an LTV / interest rate conversation. It's what kind of, you know, what do I have to put up in Bitcoin to be able to get the interest rate? And ultimately, it's a function of, you know, if we're at 80% LTV and we're saying, okay, we're willing to post, you know, 80% of the value in the loan. So you're over collateralizing Genesis. In that context, I think you can still get rates around 7 to 9% a year, kind of borrowing against it. If you're willing to put up more collateral, and have that, you know, the LTV much lower, then we can certainly kind of get to the 4 or 5%, and then even more. If you're double at your 2x, 3x, the rates can definitely get very, very low. So it really depends on the amount of financing you want to take out versus the Bitcoins that you want to post as collateral.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for sharing everything about Genesis. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.